Would you like to see additional Epstein files released?
You know what? If people stop calling me a spy, absolutely.
This is what people online are pointing to, the fact that Patel's girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, works for PragerU, which is a media company that supposedly espouses American values, except for the fact that it is run by a former Israeli military intelligence officer.
Something explosive just hit the internet, and people cannot believe these names are now tied together in the same drama. Erika Kirk and Alexis Wilkins, two women already surrounded by major honeypot accusations online, have suddenly teamed up and aimed straight at Candace Owens. Their claims are serious too. They are accusing Candace of being connected to Russia and are reportedly trying to pressure YouTube into removing her podcast completely. That move instantly turned this into a full-blown public war instead of just another online argument. But anyone who follows Candace already knew she was not going to stay silent for long. She responded fast, and she did not show up with vague statements or emotional posts. She came loaded with screenshots, sources, documents, and detailed receipts that she says expose what this sudden campaign against her is really trying to cover up. And once people started digging through what Candace released, the spotlight quickly shifted away from her and landed directly on Alexis Wilkins instead. Now the conversation is turning into something much bigger. People are starting to ask who Alexis really is, what her background actually looks like behind the public image, and why she and Erika Kirk suddenly seem to be pushing the exact same narrative at the exact same time. Because according to the records and claims now circulating online, there may be far more to this story than most people first realized.
What I told Erika Kirk was that part of the reason why I suspected Turning Point USA and why I thought she should be looking into other people is because someone at Turning Point USA got a message out to me. And that message was that I need to look further into Andrew Kolvac.
On the surface, Alexis Wilkins looks like the picture-perfect country music personality. She posts Bible verses, talks about faith, shares messages about values, and presents herself online as wholesome and down-to-earth. That is the image most people see every day. That is the carefully polished brand she has built across social media and conservative media circles. But once people started digging deeper, they found a background that looks far more connected and politically plugged in than the average country singer story. Alexis reportedly comes from a family with documented links to both the military world and the defense industry, and that instantly changed how many people started viewing her public image. Long before her name started circulating in music and entertainment spaces, Alexis was already working inside political circles. She served as a press secretary for former military intelligence officer and Arizona Congressman Abraham Hamade. That is not the kind of position someone randomly falls into overnight. That role placed her directly around political strategy, messaging, and intelligence-connected environments from the start, and the connections did not stop there. Alexis also developed public ties with major conservative media organizations like PragerU, The Daily Wire, and Turning Point USA, which are some of the biggest platforms in conservative political media today. She reportedly created content for PragerU and even hosted her own political program on Rumble, where she regularly discussed politics, policy, and cultural issues. But one detail especially started making people raise eyebrows online.
Now, it turns out that he is required to fly on the FBI plane, no matter where he goes, whether it's a personal event or if it's a business event. But he is a hypocrite because there are clips of Kash Patel calling the FBI corrupt before he was in the FBI and saying that taxpayers shouldn't have to fund their personal trips. And now he's funding his personal trip to go see his girlfriend, Alexis.
At different points, Alexis reportedly spoke publicly about intelligence-related topics, including warnings involving alleged sleeper cells operating inside the United States. For many viewers, that sounded far outside the usual lane of a country music artist, especially considering her political background and high-profile relationship connections. That is the moment where the questions online really started getting louder. That is where people online started asking even bigger questions.
I am everyone right now when I say that Kash Patel is the most embarrassing human in the United States. After this tweet, I realized we are not a serious nation and the empire is in its decline. So the backstory is Kash Patel, he had a marriage breakup. He starts dating this cute little thing, Alexis. She's very cute, very pretty girl, makes videos online. And I don't know. I guess he flew down in his FBI plane to go see her down in Nashville. People found out that he went to go see her down in Nashville. The internet revolted and said this is an inappropriate use of taxpayer funds.
How does someone with a country music image suddenly have access to intelligence-style information? Why talk about sensitive topics publicly instead of leaving that to official government channels? And why does her public behavior sometimes look more like a political strategist working a media campaign than an artist focused on building a music career? Then people began looking closely at the timeline of how Alexis Wilkins entered Kash Patel's life, and that is where the comparisons to Erika Kirk started exploding online. Once the timelines are placed side by side, many viewers say the similarities are hard to ignore. Alexis was reportedly 24 years old when she allegedly started dating Kash Patel in January 2023. Kash was 43 at the time. Reports say they first crossed paths during the Reawaken America tour months earlier. And according to critics online, the biggest reason this situation grabbed so much attention is because very few people had heard Alexis Wilkins' name before that relationship became public. She was not widely known in political media circles or mainstream entertainment spaces before suddenly becoming connected to one of the most influential names tied to intelligence and law enforcement discussions.
There's been an allegation made by prominent podcaster Candace Owens that she's received a death threat, a credible death threat from the French, that a threat has been made on her life, and that the French, she's been told, also may have had a role in Charlie's assassination. Have you looked into either of those? Do you believe she's received a credible death threat from the French, or that the French had something potentially to do with Charlie's death?
Any American that receives a death threat from overseas or anywhere in America is going to be fully investigated. So we're not going to turn our eye away from that investigation or any others. If there's anything to it, this FBI will respond to it.
That timing is exactly why the speculation online intensified so fast. Critics began comparing it to the timeline involving Erika Kirk and Charlie Kirk, pointing out how both women reportedly entered these high-profile conservative circles right before the men involved experienced even greater political influence and visibility. Whether people believe the comparisons or not, the internet has clearly locked onto the pattern, and the debate around it keeps getting louder. People online keep pointing to the same pattern again and again. A young woman with a polished public image, documented political connections, intelligence-adjacent experience, and family ties connected to the defense world suddenly appears beside a powerful public figure right before he steps into one of the biggest positions in the country. That alone has fueled nonstop speculation across social media and political circles. But according to critics, the detail that really changed the conversation involves the Epstein files. Before Alexis reportedly entered Kash Patel's life, Kash had been very vocal about demanding transparency from the FBI regarding Epstein-related investigations. He publicly pushed for more information to be released and repeatedly argued that the public deserved answers about what was contained inside those documents. Then, according to people tracking the timeline online, everything appeared to shift. After Alexis became part of the picture and Kash later became FBI director, critics say his tone on the issue changed dramatically. Instead of continuing to push aggressively for disclosures, Kash reportedly told Congress there was no credible evidence pointing toward additional high-profile individuals needing further investigation connected to Epstein. That reversal instantly triggered backlash online because many people viewed it as a complete change from his earlier public stance. Supporters say his position may have evolved after reviewing official information, while critics argue the sudden shift raised even more questions about what changed behind the scenes. Either way, the internet exploded with reactions once those older statements were compared side by side with the newer ones. And then there is Alexis herself. Across her social media activity, political commentary, public appearances, and online content, critics point out that she has never publicly focused on the Epstein case at all. For someone who openly discusses national security concerns, foreign influence, and intelligence-related topics, some viewers online find that silence noticeable and surprising. That contrast is exactly why this debate has become so intense across political media spaces. Things escalated even further after Megyn Kelly asked Alexis Wilkins a direct question during an interview. "Do you want the Epstein files released?" And according to viewers watching the exchange, Alexis laughed before answering. She reportedly said Kash Patel would release the files, but only if people stopped accusing her of being a spy. That response immediately sparked backlash online because many critics felt she connected public demands for transparency to personal attacks against her reputation. The reaction across social media was intense, with people debating whether the comment was meant as sarcasm, frustration, or something more serious. Critics quickly argued that the answer came across badly because the Epstein investigation involves allegations tied to victims and powerful individuals. Supporters, on the other hand, defended Alexis and claimed people were twisting her words to fit larger online conspiracy narratives. But regardless of interpretation, that interview clip spread everywhere and poured gasoline on an already explosive situation. Then Alexis took things to another level by posting a massive 13-part thread on X that instantly grabbed attention across political media spaces. The thread was packed with accusations, claims about coordinated influence campaigns, and allegations involving several major public figures. In the posts, Alexis claimed she had evidence suggesting Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, and General Michael Flynn were connected to what she described as a foreign-linked influence operation targeting members of the Trump administration. She also claimed she personally became the target of coordinated attacks online. One of the biggest claims from the thread involved her allegation that Russia and members of the Catholic Church worked together to spread narratives falsely labeling her as a honeypot in order to isolate Kash Patel by targeting the person closest to him publicly. Those accusations immediately triggered massive reactions online, with supporters and critics both flooding social media to debate the claims nonstop. That claim alone made jaws drop across the internet. Alexis Wilkins publicly suggested that Russia and members of the Catholic Church were supposedly working together to convince people she was a spy. That was the core argument she pushed in her massive 13-part thread on X, and the reaction online was immediate disbelief, confusion, and non-stop debate. What made the situation even stranger for critics was the way Alexis described how she supposedly uncovered this alleged operation. She claimed she had spent months teaching herself how to build programs that proved the campaign against her was real. But according to people reading the thread, she never clearly explained what kind of programs she created, how they worked, or what evidence they actually produced. That lack of detail only pushed the controversy even further. Then, right in the middle of all the chaos, Alexis also stepped in to defend Erika Kirk. She claimed Erika had supposedly been targeted by Candace Owens through the same coordinated attacks. That instantly caught attention because now two women facing the exact same honeypot accusations were publicly defending each other while accusing the same person of running a larger operation against them. For critics online, that overlap looked impossible to ignore. They argued the timing, messaging, and public strategy between Alexis and Erika appeared unusually aligned. Supporters disagreed and said both women were simply responding to attacks at the same time. But either way, social media immediately locked onto the similarities and turned them into one of the biggest talking points in the entire controversy. Candace Owens responded carefully but firmly. Instead of turning the situation into a heated, emotional fight, she publicly invited Alexis onto her show and challenged her to explain the claims directly on camera. Candace even posted publicly that the allegations were so unbelievable, she genuinely wanted Alexis to walk viewers through the evidence herself. She tagged Alexis directly and said it would be her distinct honor to host the discussion. But after all the public accusations and viral posts, Alexis never accepted the invitation and did not publicly respond to the offer at all. Alexis never responded to the direct challenge. After posting a massive 13-part thread accusing major public figures and describing what she claimed was an international influence operation involving Russia, the Catholic Church, and political media personalities, she suddenly went quiet once Candace Owens invited her to explain everything publicly in a recorded conversation. That silence immediately became part of the controversy itself. People online quickly pointed out the contrast. Alexis had been willing to make explosive accusations across social media, but when given the chance to walk through the evidence step by step in a public setting, there was no response. Critics argued that raised even more questions about the strength of the claims being made. Supporters pushed back and claimed she simply did not want to walk into what they viewed as a hostile media setup. Either way, the moment fueled even more debate online. Candace then followed up with another post that pushed the conversation even further. Instead of sounding defensive, she openly addressed the honeypot accusations and made it clear she was not backing down from the attacks. According to Candace, Alexis had built an enormous foreign influence narrative instead of directly addressing the core reason people were questioning her in the first place. That distinction became a major talking point. Critics argued that if someone wants to shut down a theory, the strongest response is usually direct evidence and documented facts. They claimed that building a much larger counterstory involving international conspiracies and coordinated operations only pulled attention away from the original questions instead of answering them clearly. Supporters of Alexis disagreed and said she was explaining the broader context behind the attacks against her. Now, people online keep circling back to the similarities between Alexis and Erika Kirk, and not just because of their backgrounds. Critics point to the way both women publicly handled scrutiny, the organizations and political networks tied to their careers, and the timing of when they reportedly entered the lives of powerful conservative figures. Both women were suddenly connected to influential men during major turning points in those men's careers. And according to online discussions, both also had backgrounds tied more closely to political, media, or intelligence-adjacent circles than their carefully managed public images originally suggested. People online have also started pointing out how many similarities exist between Alexis Wilkins and Erika Kirk, and the list keeps getting longer. Critics note that both women launched clothing brands, both reportedly built ties within the same conservative media ecosystem, and both have connections linked to organizations like PragerU, Turning Point USA, and The Daily Wire. Then there is the Epstein issue, which critics say stands out even more because both women have remained publicly quiet on the topic while simultaneously becoming very vocal against Candace Owens. That overlap is exactly why some online commentators believe the attacks against Candace look less random and more coordinated. Supporters of Alexis and Erika strongly reject that claim, but the comparisons have continued spreading across social media anyway. According to critics, when two public figures share similar backgrounds, similar political connections, similar media networks, and begin using nearly identical messaging against the same target at the same time, people naturally start asking whether there is some larger strategy involved. That is where the conversation online shifted from simple internet drama into bigger debates about influence, alliances, and political media power struggles. And another detail people keep focusing on is the specific list of names Alexis included in her accusations. Critics say the figures she mentioned were not random choices. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, and General Michael Flynn have all publicly challenged certain establishment narratives at different points, especially involving foreign policy, government transparency, and institutional power. That pattern became another major discussion point online because many of those same figures have developed reputations for questioning dominant political narratives or criticizing powerful institutions publicly. Critics of Alexis argue that targeting those particular names looked intentional because they represent voices that often operate outside mainstream political messaging. Supporters, however, say Alexis was simply responding to individuals she believed were involved in attacks against her. And some people online also pointed to Charlie Kirk, noting that during parts of his public commentary, he too raised questions about institutional power and foreign policy issues that overlap with the broader debates now surrounding Alexis, Erika, and Candace Owens. According to critics online, Charlie Kirk had started speaking more openly about concerns tied to American foreign policy and the pressure he claimed he was receiving behind the scenes. He publicly hinted at conflicts, threats, and powerful groups pushing against the direction he was moving in politically. And now, some commentators argue that parts of that message are slowly being pushed out of public discussion altogether. What many people find especially noticeable is that Alexis Wilkins and Erika Kirk rarely address those final public statements directly. Critics argue that despite speaking extensively about conspiracies, influence campaigns, and coordinated attacks, neither woman has publicly focused much attention on the claims Charlie himself reportedly made before his death. That silence has become its own major talking point online. Critics say that if Charlie's legacy is truly being defended, then questions surrounding the pressure and threats he allegedly described should also be openly discussed. Supporters disagree and argue that not every public controversy deserves a response. But for many viewers following the story closely, the contrast remains impossible to ignore. Then the controversy expanded again when political activist Sam Parker brought PragerU into the conversation. Parker publicly claimed that Alexis's ties to PragerU pointed towards something much larger, even suggesting possible links to foreign influence operations. He specifically referenced PragerU CEO Marissa Streit while making those allegations, which instantly intensified the online debate surrounding Alexis's background and media connections. Alexis responded by denying that she actually worked for PragerU. According to her statement, she only created content for the platform rather than being directly employed by the organization. But critics quickly challenged that distinction. They argued that producing content for a platform, appearing under its branding, speaking to its audience, and helping distribute its messaging still represents a significant working relationship in practice, whether someone holds an official employee title or not. That disagreement over wording and affiliation became yet another layer added onto an already explosive political media controversy. The distinction Alexis Wilkins tried to make between working for a platform and simply creating content for it did not convince many critics online. According to commentators following the situation, that explanation sounded more like a technical loophole than a real separation. They argue that regularly producing content under a platform's brand, reaching its audience, and supporting its messaging still creates a clear public alignment, whether someone holds an official employee title or not. And when questions about loyalty and affiliation started spreading online, responses connected to PragerU leadership only added even more fuel to the controversy. Instead of calming concerns, critics claimed the statements circulating publicly only made people look closer at the growing network of political media and organizational connections tied to Alexis Wilkins and the people around her. At the center of all this is a debate that has now become impossible to ignore online. Critics argue that two women with extremely similar backgrounds, similar media connections, similar political ties, and similar silence on major topics suddenly launched public attacks against one of the loudest voices questioning them both. And they did not just criticize Candace Owens casually either. They accused her of acting as a foreign agent and reportedly pushed for her removal from a major online platform. That timing is exactly why the backlash became so massive. According to people following the story, the attacks happened right as public scrutiny surrounding Alexis and Erika was reaching new levels. Questions about their backgrounds, affiliations, public messaging, and political connections were already spreading heavily online before this entire situation exploded. Then Candace responded publicly with screenshots, sources, and documented material supporting her side of the argument, while Alexis chose not to appear publicly to defend her claims in a direct recorded discussion. For critics, that contrast only intensified the speculation already surrounding the situation. Supporters of Alexis continue to argue she owes nothing to online critics or hostile interviews, but the silence after such major accusations became one of the biggest discussion points of all. And now, the entire controversy has turned into something much larger than just internet drama. It has become a public battle over credibility, influence, media power, and who people believe is actually telling the truth behind the scenes. One side says serious questions are being unfairly dismissed. The other says dangerous narratives are being spread without proof. But either way, the attention surrounding this story is only getting bigger, not smaller. So, what do you think is really going on here? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this debate is definitely not slowing down anytime soon. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with others following the story, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update.